Shalom, family, and welcome to Into All Truth. I pray that this message glorify Yahweh, our Abba Yah, and that the Ruach Kodesh would lead you into all truth, that the Ruach Kodesh would give you a spirit of wisdom, revelation, and knowledge, and that the words that I speak in this message would find fertile ground in your heart and spirit and bring forth fruit in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Sorry I haven't put out a video for a while. I've had a lot going on, but welcome back to my channel. And today I want to go into the 7 signs that are of the end times of Jacob's trouble. And I want to explain 666. Which is the sign of the end of the scattering of the 12 tribes of Israel, and how that relates to the signs of the end times of Jacob's trouble. So I pray that you'll just sit down and relax, and if you need to take time to listen to this a few times, it's going to go quite in depth. So I thank you for your patience. I thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. If you hit the like button, it helps other people to come and see the video, because keep in mind, I am very much deterred by the rulers of this channel. So, the rulers of this platform. So anyway, but it is only for those who have ears to hear. So whoever's going to hear it is going to hear it. And I want to add that there's a lot of, well, there's just a few male teachers that I listen to that I sit under. And there's some other teachers that I listen to as well. And I don't call myself a prophet in terms of prophesying this. We're all given a gift of prophecy as Yashrael in the end times. But this is what Yah has given me, and of course it's based on what I've studied out in the Word, and you can make the decision yourself as to whether or not this be true, and in terms of what actually manifests on the earth. You will see the teachings of some of my teachers in here. All praises to the Most High for them. And it's very clear that Israel has already begun many years ago the time of Jacob's trouble, when they were handed over to the synagogues and persecuted and utterly destroyed. That's the order of things. And so I just counsel you to be wary of anyone calling themselves a prophet who says that that has not happened yet. Just as a gentle suggestion to you, and that doesn't mean that those people are wicked, it just means they're a little misguided. And I pray Yah will help them in their path. As you know, I see myself as being part of a midrash, a circle of mores, basically chopping up the word, rightly dividing it, and then coming to the truth. So that's the spirit in which my teaching always comes forward in. I have many teachers to learn from, not exclusively one, and most importantly, the Ruach HaKodesh. So I'm going to sort of wrap this portion of this up in the explanation of times, time, and half a time, and the number 666 being completed. But as part of that, I need to go into the 7 signs that point to the end times of Jacob's trouble. And there are signs in the heaven, signs in the earth, because Yah has always called heaven and earth to witness for signs and seasons and times. So let's get into it. So with respect to the end times of Jacob's trouble, what will help to give people clarification is that there are 2 worlds that end within most of the prophecies, okay? And that is according to, obviously, Yeshua and the prophets. There is first the end and destruction of Israel and their era of rule, or eon. And then there is the end of the rule of Esau, Ha-Satan. So with respect to the 7 signs of the end, the eon rule, we have to pay attention to first the Tav, And I'm just going to go over all of these, and then we're going to go into the various scriptures that explain this. So the Tav is the X, or the two sticks together. And this, of course, is Israel as a sign, the end sign set up for the nations. And so this is Judah and Joseph coming together, or the two witnesses. The second sign is the Tav, representing the number 400 in Hebrew, according to Gematria. So that's the value of the Tav, is 400. So the 400 years ending is is the time when the iniquity of the Amorites, or Babylon, is at its fullest. So that's when it's basically ripe for the harvest. So that's the end of the 400 years. Another sign is the sun turning to darkness or black, and the moon to blood. Okay, so these are a clear sign. This is the groom coming out of his chambers for his bride, and the baptism of the bride in blood. So this is like, as in the consummation of a marriage, you have the issue of blood, and you also have blood covering the sin of Israel, and Israel as the moon, because there are so many scriptures where even Israel or Jacob is told by Joseph, says to Joseph, are the sun and the moon and the stars are going to bow down to you? You mean even myself and your mother? So your mother is the moon and Jacob is the sun. Okay, so these are signs in the heavens, a light coming from the east to the west, not lightning, it's lightening, the lightening of the sky, the brightening of the sky by the sun, and the signs in the four corners of the earth. So this is the heaven and earth giving a witness. Okay, so we'll go more into it as we get further along. Now, the sign of the return of the Son of Man is a major sign also to look at, and that is echoed in the throne of Yah and the Ruach HaKodesh and Yeshua coming down to Israel and becoming, an Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Israel, and blessing Israel, and then eventually departing. And this is presented on multiple occasions. And so we see also that Jacob's trouble starts at the time of Babylon, and it's manifested, or it becomes real prophetically, when Ezekiel enters the temple to see the throne of Yah and the four angels of his throne, and Yeshua as this man clothed with linen, scattering coals of fire all over Israel to scatter Israel. And this eventually happens at the death of Yeshua in around 27 AD, whatever you calculate it to be, and 70 AD, when the temple actually falls and signs appear in the heavens. And then at that point you see the departure of the spirit of Yah. Okay? And we also find that Yah, the Ruach, and the Mashiach, when they descend and depart, Yah descended on Mount Sinai with a smoke and a fire, and Yeshua was a wall of fire when he redeemed Israel from Egypt. And when Yah covenanted with Abraham, he also presented Yeshua as a fire between these animals when he made the covenant. And now we see the Ruach departs the temple on Passover at the time of Yeshua's death. And then Yeshua himself, as the true temple of Yah, departs the earth and dies, goes down to Sheol, then rises up to his apostles, then goes up to heaven, finally departing from the earth again. Okay? And of course, like I said, the presence of Yahuwah himself, the Most High, departs in 70 AD, Ichabod. And this also connects to sign number 5, Hasatan, the abomination of desolation, coming many times over from the point of the Babylonian captivity, even before that, because Israel lets that spirit in by worshiping, whoring after other gods. And so there's all these repeats of the Antichrist. but the final Antichrist eventually does come. And so sign number 6 is the scattering of Israel accomplished. And this is the question everyone's asking. And I've already spoken to in my videos, 400 years is over. But the ending of 400 years and the completion of the time of 666 are completely linked together. And this is the time and times and half a time of the scattering. Okay? And so this is Israel being destroyed, defeated by the enemy entirely, and the nations, having forgotten who Israel is, and Israel needing to be resurrected, just like Yeshua was from dry bones. So Israel is put to death in the 4 corners and then must be resurrected by the 4 winds, the 4 ruachs of heaven. And so the promise is, he that scatters Israel, in Isaiah 11, shall gather Israel. And this time is associated with the full-blown Antichrist, who is the Pope, and the papal bull of 1492, when the Antichrist came to North America, where the 10 tribes were, and absolutely everybody is scattered. The 7th sign is the 4 horsemen. Okay? So these are the 4 plagues that Israel endured with Egypt, and then also the 7 trumpets, marking the full deliverance and sacrifices of Israel. So this is when Israel is fully removed from the judgment time. Okay? So all of these are witnesses of heaven and earth. How do we know that? Because Yah called heaven and earth as a witness in Genesis. And in Genesis 14, Yeshua, or Melchizedek, blessed Abraham of the Most High Elohim, who is possessor of heaven and earth. In Deuteronomy 4:26, Yah says, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that you shall soon utterly perish from the land which ye go over to Jordan to possess it. You shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed. Okay? And in Deuteronomy 30, he says, it said, heaven and earth are called to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy may live. So this is what Joshua said to Israel when he gave them the choice between life and death. So let's see how all of these signs then repeat in the prophetic scriptures to confirm where we are now prophetically. That's what we're trying to establish, is where we are on the timeline of prophecy. So as we review the scriptures, we're going to take a look at how the things Yahshua spoke of worked themselves out according to these 7 signs. And we'll be looking for 2 or more witnesses, Torah, prophets, Old and Brit Hadashah, New Covenant, or and the law or law of first mention. And so the first question that is asked, of course, is what is the sign of the beginning of the end time of Jacob's trouble versus the end of Esau's world? And so we need to try and make a separation between those two. And this question is asked in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, when the apostles ask Yeshua about the end of the era and the sign of it. So let's get into those scriptures. Luke 21. Yeshua tells the apostles of the temple's destruction. And they asked him, saying, Rabbi, but when shall these things be? And what sign will there be when these things shall come to pass? And he said, take heed that you be not deceived. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Mashiach, and the time draws near. Go ye not after them. This is the 5th sign. We'll go into that later. But when ye shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by. Then he said unto them, Nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and great earthquakes shall be in divers places, and famines and pestilences, and fearful signs and great signs shall there be from heaven. This is the third sign, signs in the heavens. But before all of these things, let's repeat that. But before all of these things, because now all of these things are happening. So this is why you can't go with any prophet that says that we have to be given over to the rabbis and synagogues. No, it's already happened. And the signs are in the sky. But before all of these things, they shall lay their hands on you. You know, African Americans always go, did you lay your hands on me? Right? They shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. And it shall turn to you for a testimony. Settle it therefore in your hearts, not to meditate before what ye shall answer. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay or resist. And ye shall be betrayed by both parents and brethren and kinsfolks and friends, and some of you they shall cause to be put to death, and ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But there shall not a hair on your heads perish, but in your patience possess ye all your souls. It's sixth sign here, scattered Israel. But when you shall see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that the desolation is near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, let those who are in the midst of her depart, and let not those who are in the country enter her. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe to those who are pregnant, and to those who are nursing babies in those days, for there will be great distress in the land and wrath upon his people. So this is the beginning of the scattering. Okay, and notice in verse 12 here, does it say, you will be betrayed by parents and brethren and kinfolks and friends, and some of you they shall cause to be put to death. So some people will be put to death, and ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but there shall not a hair on your head perish. In your patience possess ye all your souls. So some would be put to death as saints, and others, not a hair on their head would perish. And they would have to be patient so they could possess their souls. And I think this will even happen in this time. And they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled by the Gentiles until the chimes of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Okay? So the second sign of the coming of Son of Man is the ending of Esau's reign and the time of Jacob's trouble ending. And so here's a clue here in verse 25. And there will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars, and on the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. Parable of the fig tree. And he spoke to them a parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. When they are already budding, you see and know for yourselves that summer is now near. So you also, when you see these things happen, know that the kingdom of Yahuwah is near. Surely I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. Now we understand heaven and earth will pass away, okay? That's why Yeshua becomes the sun that will light the kingdom, okay? The importance of watching. But take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and the cares of this life, and that day come on you unexpectedly. So we're not supposed to worry and fret. I pray for all of Yisrael that we have faith in Yah, and we don't do that. For it will come as a snare on all those who dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch therefore and pray always, that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that will come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. So we're going to look at Matthew in terms of what we've just read, because it's kind of a repeat, and then we can break down these signs. So Matthew 24 discusses the end of the age, the end of Israel's world, and also the end of Esau's world. Okay, that, again, like I said in the beginning, the two worlds ending. And there's actually kind of an overlap. So let's look at all of this repeated in Matthew. Yeshua went out and departed from the temple, and his talmidim came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Yeshua said unto them, See ye not all these things? Amen. I say to you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the apostles came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of your coming and the end of the world? So these are the questions: the sign of your coming, the end of the world. So the first sign, what shall be the sign of the end of the era or the eon, the end of Israel's world? Here in Greek, we see that this word is eon, okay? Ion or eon, the end of the age. So we know this is the end of Israel's world, Yah's people's world, which is the most important world to Yah. And so what is the sign of the end of Israel's reign, eon, era, world? And sign here is written in Hebrew as cause or aeth, which sounds like oath, kind of. And this is a picture of an ox and the tav, okay? The ox, the aleph, and the tav, which is basically the beginning and the end. And it's a picture of two cross sticks used to make a sign for the mark. That's the tav. And you combine these two pictures, and they represent an ox moving towards the mark. So Israel's restoration. And, you know, Judah was symbolized by the lion, and Ephraim the ox. And the ox is the symbol for North America, the buffalo. So the Aleph moving towards the Tav, in other words, Ephraim and Judah coming together at the cross, okay, under Hamashiach. And of course, these are the two sticks, two witnesses. The sign is also H226. And this is a vow or a covenant being upheld. The Aleph worshipped by the two sticks or worshipped at the cross. So Yashrael is a sign, meaning a miracle, an end sign or an oath, a covenant being acknowledged. So this is Yah's eternal covenant with Israel, acknowledged by this sign or monument or signal. So this is Israel's deliverance, so that they can worship Yeshua at the cross. So this is just like the deliverance of Israel from Egypt. Let my people go so we can go and worship our Creator in our land, right? So this is Israel being delivered to worship Yah in Hamashiach. And of course, the Torah or Taurus, law, the Aleph, the leader, and Mashiach. So this is the renewed covenant. And of course, we know that Israel is Yah's firstborn son of mankind, first fruits. So here is the end sign. Israel is an ensign. We see they were in a cross-like configuration in the desert, the two trees coming together, and this is just like Hamashiach on the cross. And so, like I said, the sign is the two cross sticks. And this is confirmed in Ezekiel when Ezekiel says, is told by Yah, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his fellows, and put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in my hand. And of course, Isaiah says, this is now we're in the Old Testament, right? I will lift up an ensign, a naz, a sign or a banner to the nations. Israel is the sign of the end, and he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Okay? And of course, Exodus here to confirm Israel is the firstborn son. It says, Israel's my son, even my firstborn son. So we're confirming Israel is the ensign, the two sticks, and the firstborn son. Let my firstborn son go, so that he may serve thee. If thou refuse, I will slay thy son, even thy firstborn. And so this is the coming of Israel, the sign of the Son of Man, the first fruit. That's what Israel was, the first fruit. So the second sign, like I said, the Tav, the two cross sticks, the numerical value for the Tav is 400. So at the end of 400 years of slavery, this marks the end of the captivity. Why? Because this is when the iniquity of the Amorites is fulfilled, as I said before earlier. Know for a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. But in the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And because, most importantly, the 400 years, the 400 marks the end of captivity and the scattering, which I'm going to show you guys later in Daniel, is reinforced there. So it says, wherefore if they shall say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers. Believe it not. So there's going to be many antichrists coming, okay, saying that they're Hamashiach. For as lightning, as in the lightning, brightening of the sky, not lightning as in Satan fell like lightning. For as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also be the coming of the Son of Man. And this is repeated in Isaiah. I will bring you the seed from the east and gather from the west. I will blot out your transgressions for my name's sake. So again, this is the sign of the coming of the Son of Man. So it's basically the Israel as the sign that signifies the coming of the Son of Man. So he comes forth, sends his angels to gather the elect from the four corners of the earth, and then the firstborn son is raised up and returned to the land. And this is the sign, the warning of the coming of the Son of Man. So this is the true coming of the firstborn son, and then this is the warning that soon to come is the Son of Yah and Son of Man, Yeshua HaMashiach, okay? So this is a twofold meaning in this, but it's actually a sign of the coming of the Son of Man, not the coming of HaMashiach, okay? It's right there in the language. I will lift up an ensign. This is what will be the sign of the coming of the Son of Man, okay? Matthew then goes on to say here, just referring to the sixth sign, the scattering being the end. And in the fourth generation, they shall come here again when the iniquity of the Amorites is fulfilled. So here is just finishing Matthew here. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Okay, so here's the dead, dry bones that Esau, the eagle, Babylon, is feeding on. And then immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. So this is the witness of heavens. So let's go deeper into this with the next sign. The third sign is characterized as the heavens in Genesis 1. And Yahuwah said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years." And it's interesting because I sang this song of praise in my study group last week, and it just gave me more clarity. It was part of, because I've been wanting to do this teaching for over a month, but I have just not had the energy. So I'm sorry about that, you guys. But the blessing was that in Psalm 19, 1-6, it says, "The heavens declare the glory of Yah. The firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world." In other words, they state the end of the world. They say, this is when the end of the world is. Not only do they go to the ends of the earth, but they state, hey, this is the end of the world right now. In them he has set a tabernacle for the sun, which is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. So this is Hamashiach. The sun rules the day, not the moon. Israel doesn't rule time. Hamashiach and Yah do, because they're echad, they're one. So we're not going to be waiting on the moon, Israel, to time anything. We're going to be waiting on the bridegroom, who is the sun, who's in a tabernacle and comes out of his chamber. We're not worshiping the sun, but he is the sign of Hamashiach. Okay? And he rejoices like a strong man to run its race. It's rising from one end of heaven to the other, like, as we said, the lightning coming from the east to the west, lightening. And its circuit to the other end. So two ends are discussed from here. From one end of heaven, okay, and its circuit to the other end. There's two ends. The end of the era of Israel and the end of the era of Esau's rule. Two ends. This is the sign of Yeshua's coming, the sign of the end of the world. And there is nothing hidden from its heat, the fire of the sun. Hamashiach, a wall of fire. Hamashiach, the burning bush. There is nothing hidden from its heat. So when we see Yeshua coming to get his bride from east to west, we see him coming to get his bride from east to west. The heavens are the word. This is what we gather from this. Are the heavens not the word confirming the end? And their words to the end of the world? And the gathering of the elect, and the sun returning to its moon bride. So this is Hamashiach returning to get his bride from the west. Now, an interesting thing is that this year the full moon did not fall on Passover. Okay? Not Passover according to equinox. Now, my understanding is that a lot of people are in error because they're timing things according to the moon. And so what has happened is that Passover this year for them is lining up perfectly with the pagan time of Easter. And family, Yah is not going to wink at this anymore. I think we just have next Passover and we're out. Sadly, I'm talking about Hebrew Israelites, the awakened people. They are mixing the profane with the holy by celebrating at the same time as the pagans. I think the Pope and the fake people and the Muslims would be so unwise as to celebrate Easter on real Passover. I don't think so. But we're unwise to celebrate Passover at Easter. What is the difference then between Israel and the Christians? Is it any wonder that Yah sent 14 tornadoes last night over Easter? He is not pleased with the profane being mixed with the Kodesh. And so this year, the full moon did not fall around the time of Passover. The New Year and Passover begin at the same time every year. Yah changes not. It doesn't begin according to a new moon or a full moon. It is according to the order given by the sun. And it's not a sun we worship. So what was the warning in Jubilees? Again, only those looking to the moon to worship it in its proper name, Yerach, look to the moon alone for appointed times and worship. Jubilees says, there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year, 10 days too soon. For this reason, the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order. This is not decently in an order. They disturb the order and make an abominable day the day of testimony, Easter, doing Passover on Easter, and an unclean day a feast day. Pig sacrifice on Easter, yet you're calling it Passover. And they will confound all the days, the Kodesh with the unclean, Passover on Easter, and the unclean day with the Kodesh, for they will go wrong as to the months and the Shabbats and the feasts and the Jubilees. Okay? There it is. And that is what Israel is doing. The awakened remnant is doing it. What is the warning? Lest you lift up your eyes to heaven and you see the sun and the moon and the stars and even all the hosts of heaven and be driven to worship them. And of course, a lot of people think the earth revolves around the sun. Sun worship. Okay? So Yah says he sits above the circle of the earth and has stretched out the heavens as a tent to dwell in, and the earth is his footstool. So if we picture this vision of the earth revolving around the sun, it makes a mockery of Yah. It's kind of the picture of a silly bear in a 3-ring circus struggling as he tries to stay on top of a moving ball inside of a circus ring. The earth is Yah's footstool. And we can only go with the word on this. Thus saith Yahweh, heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool. At the same time every year begins the year, and so at spring equinox, and so Passover is at the same time every year. But the question here is, will the full moon meet Hamashiach, the Passover, next year? I don't know. I haven't looked at it, done the calculations, but it's a question to ask. Okay? It's a very important question to ask, because Hamashiach returns for his bride, and his bride comes to him in his timing, not hers. Okay? And even when we read Song of Solomon, when the Shunammite, who is a type of Israel, a type of moon, and Solomon is a type of Hamashiach, she goes looking for him a second time after he's come to her, because it's a type for him coming for her and her not being ready. And then he's coming again, and she looks around for him and all of her enemies, and she's looking for him among her enemies, and she can't find him. And so I think this is the error that's going on in Israel, is they're always timing things according to the moon, when they think Israel is ready, not when Hamashiach says Israel is ready. come and meet me, my bride. Okay? So, and stuff. I'm saying it out of concern for Israel, because when Yah gets mad at us, and he gets mad at me too, right? All of us. When he's wanting to chasten us, it can be a big deal. And I just don't want Israel to continue to be chastened. And this concept of unity, which comes from the Catholic Church, unity no matter what. We can be unified and fall right into hell. We are to unite with Hamashiach and his ways, with Yah and his ways, not our own ways. Okay? So I'm just concerned for the soul of Israel. It's not because I think I'm any better or something like that, but the Satanists, the witches, the Muslims, the people who say they're the people, they all worship the moon. So why are we timing everything? Iraq is New York, is Jericho is another word for Iraq, which means moon. And Iraq is another word for Jericho, which means moon. So they name the capital city of Babylon Moon, because they're moon worshippers. And here Israel is timing everything according to the moon. It's wicked. I'm just so grieved about it. And I'm grieved about Yah's correction, because we have the ability to know. Everybody's, we'll find out when Yah comes, Yeshua comes. Yeah, we will find out for sure, because no one knows the day or the hour. But we have to do our best. We have to do things with all diligence. That's the command. So just being like, that's what everyone else is doing, is not acceptable. It's really an offense against Yah. It's very concerning to me. But anyway, I'm not saying this to be mean or like, I'm just concerned, because the timing of everything is so important to our redemption. And so going along with everyone else, like the Catholic Church says all churches should be united, unity is the mantra of pagan religions. Do what thou wilt, just have unity. And so it's frightening to me. I'm frightened for the soul and people of Israel when they refuse to look into these matters and keep correcting until they arrive at the correct thing. But it's just business as usual. It's very concerning. But anyway, I'm going to go on. Reiterating here what I just said. Yeshua is the groom, and we'll see later that the throne of Yah comes with darkness first, as he did when he came down on Mount Sinai. And then Yeshua is coming with a sickle for the harvest. I keep repeating this, but I just want you guys to get these concepts with his perfect judgment, blackness, to dip his robe in blood, and then the sun turning black. Israel's the bride, who has also washed her clothes in blood, the blood moon. And so I went into the whole equilux thing here. And let's just continue here with Matthew. This is all going through Matthew, which was repeated in Luke. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with great power and glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Okay? And so again, we're just repeating here that this is Israel. This is when Yeshua comes to gather, that is his sign of his coming. But what does he do? He gathers his elect. He doesn't fully come down and touch down on the earth yet. So this is his sign of his coming, the gathering of the elect, and the appearance of him with his angels in heaven to gather the elect. Okay? So sign number 4 is these 4 winds and Yah's throne, who are the 4 angels who sit at the 4 corners of the earth. And there's the 4 spirits. Okay? There are 4 spirits who sit before the throne of Yah, who are these ruach of the earth also. And they line up with the 4 corners and with the configuration of the 12 tribes in the desert. And we can confirm this in Zechariah 2, 6-7. Ho, ho, come forth and flee from the land of the north, saith the Most High, for I have spread you abroad as the four winds of heaven. Deliver thyself, O Zion, that dwellest with the daughter of Babylon. This is confirmed in Jeremiah at the time of Israel, the beginning of Israel's punishment and judgment. Horses are often representing judgment. Jeremiah 4:12-13 says, even a full wind from those places shall come unto me, and now also I will give sentence against them. Behold, he shall come up as clouds, and his chariots shall be as a whirlwind. His horses are swifter than eagles. Woe unto us, for we are spoiled. So how do you create a whirlwind? With four winds. And this is also a picture of chariots, horses, and they're swifter than eagles. So Yah said, I bear you up on eagle's wings. Yah says that Yeshua will come on the clouds and have his angels gather the elect. So we can see some parallels here. So these are the four spirits which create the four winds, and they sit before Yah, and they appear as horses also. And then there are four heads in the configuration of the 12 tribes, north, south, east, and west, and they have the same faces as the four angels beneath Yah's throne. So when we look at this, the spirit, the angels, and the tribes, four of each, which ends up with the number 12, which is 1 + 2 is 3, is always a number of completion and representative of the 12 tribes. So when these angels gather the elect from the four corners of the earth with the four winds and these chariots, then this is a sign of completion. We see the four winged creatures beneath the throne of Yah. And this is from Revelation. I beheld, the gate was opened in heavens, and a voice which was heard as a shofar talking with me, which said, come up hither, and I will show you things which must be hereafter. And I was in the Ruach, and behold, a throne set in heaven, and one sat on the throne in sight like unto an emerald. And out of the throne proceeded lightnings and thunderings and voices, and there were 7 menorah of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 ruachath of Yahuwah. And before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal, and in the midst of the throne, round about the throne, were 4 living creatures full of eyes, and behind. And the first living creature was like a lion, the second living creature like a calf, the third had the face of a man, and the fourth was like a flying eagle. So we see this configuration matching up in the desert with Israel, and then we see that this 12 tribe configuration matches up here. And of course, Israel is like these angels whose eyes have gone to and fro throughout the earth, witnessing the behavior of the nations as they were spread to the 4 corners of the earth. Of course, Mark 13 confirms this. In those days after that tribulation, so that's Israel's tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, the stars shall fall from heaven, and you'll see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with power and glory. And then he shall send his angels to gather his elect from the 4 winds, from the uttermost part of the earth to the uttermost part of heaven. Okay? And then we have the parable of the fig tree. So that's the greening of Israel coming to fruit. And then heaven and earth, or this generation, shall not pass away till all these things be completed. I'm not going to read it all because we've just read it multiple. So let's go into the 4th sign. This is Yah, the Ruach, and Mashiach descending upon Israel and the temple and the tent of meeting and the apostles, and also departing. Okay? Now we know that Yah descended on Mount Sinai as fire and smoke, and the Ruach as a smoke at the tent of meeting, and Yeshua appeared as a fire many times in the burning bush. And also when Yah covenanted with Abraham, he was the fire that went between the midst of the sacrificed beasts. So let's look at the Ruach first. The Ruach departs from the temple at the time that Mashiach is on the cross during this eclipse. And the account is in Matthew 27:51. It says, "And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in two from top to bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent, and graves were opened, and many bodies of the Kodeshim which slept arose." And the Ruach is given to the apostles, who then accept the Mashiach at Pentecost. Okay? But that's only to those who accept Mashiach. So eventually, after Israel is killed and scattered and killed, then the Ruach thins out, but is still present in some. Now with Yeshua, he departs the earth twice. He goes down to Sheol once, and he departs after, of course, he rises, but is rejected by Israel. So Matthew 27:45, from the 9th hour, 6th hour to the 9th hour, darkness came upon all the earth unto the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour, Yeshua cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. So, Yah, why have you forsaken me? And so he goes down into hell and then rises again. And then in Mark 16:19, after he's visited the apostles, the Talmudim, he then must return to heaven because of Israel's rejection. So Mark 16:19, so then after Yeshua had spoken to them, he was received up to heaven and sat at the right hand of Yah. And of course, he is the right hand of Yah. And then, of course, Yah departs from the temple in 70 AD, and they call this Ichabod. And so this was actually announced just before the Babylonian captivity, when he actually came down to see what was going on with Israel. He brought his throne down into the temple to check it all out. And then he sends Yeshua, the Son of Man, clothed in linen, to take fire from beneath his throne and scatter it over Jerusalem. In other words, over Israel. Because of Israel's spiritual adultery, and this is witnessed to. And so a scripture in Luke, which is of significance to this and Yeshua's return, is the scripture that says, I am come to send fire on the earth, and what will I, if it be already kindled? So it was kindled from this point when Yahuwah comes with his throne to visit the temple to see all the adultery of Israel. So let's just quickly review that. This is the prophecy of the departure of Yah and the scattering of Israel by the hand of Yah, who is Hamashiach. So Ezekiel 10 here says, and this is confirmation that Yeshua was accomplishing this scattering by his hand. And he spoke to the man clothed in linen, that's Yeshua, and said, go between the wheels, even under the cherub, the cherubim, and fill your hand, now he's the right hand of Yah, right, with coals of fire from beneath the cherubim, and scatter them over the city. And it came to pass, when he had commanded the man clothed with linen, Yeshua, saying, take fire from beneath the wheels and from between the cherubims, then he went, and I stood beside the wheels. And then one cherub stretched forth his hand from between the cherubims unto the fire that was between the cherubims, and took thereof, and put it into the hands of him that was clothed with linen, who took it and went out. Okay? And the glory of the Most High, here it is. This is the heavenly announcement of the exit of Yah from the temple. And the glory of the Most High departed from off the threshold of the house, and stood over the cherubims. And the cherubims lifted up their wings and mounted up from the earth in my sight, and they went out, and the wheels also were beside them, and everyone stood at the door of the east gate of the Most High's house, and the glory of Yah of Israel was over them above. And everyone had 4 faces apiece, everyone 4 wings, and the likeness of the hands of man was under their wings. And so when we refer to Ichabod, the departure of Yah from the second temple. So this is his departure from the first temple, okay? But it is also what will happen before will happen again. So this is also his departure from the second temple being announced, all right? So let's just listen to Josephus's account of that.
Well, there's a precept for knowledge, and knowledge is actually the word of the Most High. So this is actually saying that they don't have knowledge. They don't have the word of the Most High. But he's telling them that he's taken away the hedge. And as you can see in Isaiah 5, that the hedge gets taken away. And then in verse 13, it says, therefore, my people are going into captivity. So it was the Most High that took away the hedge. Right. The hedge was taken away and the people captivity. All right. So, and this is what happened. As we said, that this was during the time of Passover, and this was during a moed, during an appointed time when the Most High come in to visit his people. And it's interesting because during this time, the Romans saw something. So as they're approaching the city, as they came to the city, they saw something, during this time of Passover. And we're going to read about it. And it says, at the very last paragraph, and it says, prodigies or strange occurrences had occurred, which this nation, prone to superstition by halting all religious rites, did not deem it lawful to expiate by offering any sacrifice. All right, let's keep reading. It says, there had been seen hosts joining battle in the skies, the fiery gleam of arms, the temple illuminated by a sudden radiance from the clouds. The doors of the inner shrine were suddenly thrown open, and a voice of more than a mortal tone was heard to cry that the gods were departing. At the same instant, there was a mighty stir as of departure. Some few put a fearful meaning on these events, but in the most, there was a firm persuasion that in the ancient records of their priests was contained a prediction of how at this time the East was to grow powerful and the rulers coming from Judea. Right. Josephus, among other fearful prodigies, odd things, relates that before the rebellion, when a great multitude were assembled in Jerusalem at the Passover, at the Moed, right, the appointed time of visitation. So he sent Josephus, remember, he's there, he's seeing it for himself. So he's saying at the Passover, and he's being very specific, at the 9th hour of the night. So great a light shone round the altar and the temple that it seemed to be bright day. That a few days after the festival, before sunset, chariots and troops of soldiers in armor were seen passing through the clouds and surrounding cities, and that the priests going into the inner temple felt the place and trembled and heard a voice more than human crying, let us depart hence. This account was confirmed by Tacitus, the Roman historian, who says, so Tacitus, remember Tacitus was there around the time that says, portents and prodigies, or odd things, announced the ruin of Jerusalem. Swords were seen glittering in the air, and battled armies appeared, and the temple was illuminated by a stream of light that issued from the heavens. The portal flew open, and a voice more than human announced the immediate departure of the Elohims. There was heard at the same time a terrific sound, as if superior beings were actually rushing forth. So just before the Rome showed up at the doorstep of Jerusalem, the presence of the Most High that was there during Passover, that they left. It left, right? And everybody's, they're writing about it. It says both the Romans and the children of Israel are taking note of it. And the Romans, they're looking at this as a sign that Jerusalem's getting ready to fall. And even people in Israel saw it as a sign that something bad was about to happen.
So now we come to the fifth sign, the abomination of desolation. So what caused the glory of Yah to depart from the temple? Well, the beginning of the end of Israel, well, it was actually announced from the beginning, from Moshe, and from Yah, but the actions were that Dawid committed adultery with Sheba. So the king and priest of Israel, the firstborn son, the one who was able to wear the ephod and be king over Israel, committed adultery with Sheba. Okay? And he had this child born of adultery, and the son died. Okay? So, and when Nathan convicts him of this sin, David says, well, he actually, what Nathan does is he gives him a whole story about a man who took another man's ewe lamb, female lamb. And David says of the man who took the other man's lamb, the man who has done this shall surely die, and he shall restore fourfold for the lamb, because he did this thing and because he had no pity. Then Nathan tells him, you are the man. So prophetically, what happened here was that Israel had to be scattered to the four corners and daily sacrificed, for repaying fourfold for the lamb. Four corners, fourfold. Okay? And this was the beginning of the end of the kingdom of Israel. And this resulted in the death of the son of Israel. So the son that's going to be reborn at this time. And of course, this is also an echo of the death of Yeshua, the son of Yah. And of course, the same sin was multiplied in Solomon, who acted out of that same adultery, both physically and spiritually, having over 1,000 wives and concubines, breaking the law of fornication, about fornication and adultery, okay? And fornicating with other nations and having his heart taken away from Yah. And so the first captivity came after this, of course, and that was the Babylonian captivity, which was the beginning of the end. There would be a few more multiple returns of Israel to the land, but it would never be as great. And of course, when the second temple was rebuilt, it was rebuilt with less splendor than the first after the Medo-Persian captivity, when the southern kingdom was restored. And those who had seen the original temple were very grieved and mourned, because they knew that more ends were going to come. So let's go into this fifth sign a little bit more. And we're going to talk a little bit about Daniel. And this is also the time, of course, when the daily sacrifice is taken away by Yeshua's ultimate sacrifice, but also by the fall of the temple. And animal sacrifices being removed from the temple. And this, of course, is at the time of Yeshua, when there's scribes and Pharisees. So there's there's both Israel, corrupt Israel, and the Edomites mixed in with Israel, performing priestly activities and presenting animals that were blemished. And so they're defiling the temple. But Yeshua's ultimate sacrifice takes away the daily sacrifice. And so do these defiled animals at the time of these unruly priests. So let's look at Daniel 9:27 to find out about the abomination of desolation. So Daniel 9:27 says, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation," so the final wrapping up of times, "that determined shall be poured upon the desolate." So Israel is the desolate temple. So not only was it the physical temple, but it was the tent of the man, of human beings, our earthly body temple. Would be desolated, killed entirely, put to death, and defiled with abominations. And of course, Yeshua warns about this abomination of desolation taking place when he says, "When ye therefore shall see that the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place." There we go. We'll go into more of it later, but there it is. And so after this, Israel fell by the sword and was led away captive into all nations and sold by the Greeks and the Medo-Persians into slavery. Okay, while some escaped west. So this was the final abomination of desolation. Okay, especially because it's Yeshua who takes it away. All right. Now, we need to understand what caused the glory of Yah to depart from the temple. And in order to make way for the coming of the Antichrist and the uncovering, the discovering of Yah's secret place, so that this overspreading of the abomination could make desolate. And of course, then the Antichrist could come in. So Yah says, "My face also shall I turn from them, and they shall pollute my secret place, for robbers shall enter into it and defile it." Now, here is the account of the wickedness of Israel that pushed Yah to this place, Ezekiel 1:1. And here is Ezekiel being taken up by Yah, or angels, and moved to another place from amongst the captives at the river of Kavar. So he says, "I was among the captives by the river of Kavar, that the heavens were opened, and the hand of Yahuwah was upon me." So this is the right hand. This is HaMashiach. "And he brought me to the door of the court, and he said to me, Go in and behold the wicked abominations that they do there. So I went in, and I saw, and behold, every form of creeping things and abominable beasts, and all idols in the house of Israel, portrayed on the wall round about." And moving to verse 12, "Son of Adam, have you seen what the ancients do of the house of Israel, do in the dark, in the chambers of his imagery?" Then he brought me to the door of the gate of Yahuwah's house, which was toward the north, and behold, women weeping for Tammuz. So this is just like all the Christian women in the church who cry for Jesus. They're weeping for Tammuz, for Hail Zeus, for the earth pig. "And he brought me," verse 16, "and he brought me to the inner court of Yahuwah's house, at the door of the temple of Yahuwah, between the porch and the altar." And what did he see? Men worshiping the sun. These are people who today might say, well, the sun powers the earth. It powers the center of the earth. Photosynthesis creates life. You might want to think about that, because isn't that sun worship? Because Yah says he causes the seed to grow and brings life to the earth. The sun is for signs and seasons and for light. The toroidal force of Yahuwah from heaven powers the earth. The Taurus, the aurora borealis, the aura of the Aleph bores into the earth and powers it. The aura borealis, okay? And the eminence of Yah in heaven is emerald green, a green rainbow. And that is the color of the aurora borealis. I know because I grew up with it and lived with it for 26 years. In September, the time of Sukkot, to October, it always appeared in the sky. And that, I knew, had something to do with Yah. But these men are worshiping the sun, saying the earth revolves around the sun. Everything revolves around the sun god. Now, I've already said Yeshua is symbolized by the sun coming out of his chambers, but the actual object called the sun is not the center of everything. Yah sits above the circle of the earth, and he powers all things, which are held together in Hamashiach, not the sun. The sun is a light. So, family, this is why in Joshua 10, when Joshua asks for the day to be lengthened for the battle, it says, the sun stood still and the moon stopped until the nation avenged themselves on their enemies. Is this not written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and hastened not to go down about a whole day. So the sun stood still. Well, in the heliocentric model, the earth would have had to have stood still. Why? Because in the heliocentric model, the earth is spinning, even though the scripture says the earth shall not be moved and it's Yah's footstool. The earth spins on its axis and rotates all around the sun. So to stop the day, the earth would just have to stand still. The sun wouldn't have to do anything, neither would the moon. So we have to always look at the word to find out the truth. So these are the things Israel was doing. They had abominations all over the walls of the temples. The women were weeping for Tammuz, and men had turned away from the temple to the sun and were worshiping the sun. This is what the Maccabees, that Israel was doing at the time of Maccabees after the second temple was built. And this is the prelude to their final demise. So First Maccabees accounts that Antiochus entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and the vessels thereof, tables, showbread, veil, crown, golden ornaments, and took the silver and gold and precious vessels. Pompey and Israel under Pompey, so Judah and I guess whatever remnants of the 10 tribes were still there, shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary to defile it. And they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar with pig's blood and built idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side. And so this was the response of Yah, which was righteous, of course, because he's perfect. I love him. My face also shall I turn from them, and they shall pollute my secret place, for robbers shall enter into it and defile it. Matthew 24:15. When therefore you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Okay, so they then rejected, and I'm talking about Israel of the scattering. Israel of the scattering rejected Hamashiach and converted to Christianity and Catholicism for fear for their lives. And they forgot Hamashiach, thereby allowing the abomination of desolation to enter their temples. You see how that works? So that's when we see the abomination of desolation sitting in the temple of Yah. Sign number 6, 666, and the end of Esau and Hasatan. He who scatters Israel shall also gather Israel. Psalm 83. They have taken crafty counsel against my people and consulted against thy hidden ones. Deuteronomy 32:26. Yahweh said he would hide his people, and I said I would scatter them into the corners, and I would make remembrance of them to cease from among men. So when did this happen to Israel? Well, at the time of the fall of the temple, of course, everybody was scattered into other lands. The Nazarenes, those believing in Yeshua, went north into Europe, being warned of Yeshua in the scriptures. Mark 13:14 says, "But when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing where it ought not, then let them that be in Judea flee unto the mountains." So that was the scattering to the north, south, east, and west. And then after the fall of the temple, the believers or the people who had denied HaMashiach, they then were killed and scattered. So we look at Joel 3, "For behold, in those days and at that time, when I shall bring again the captivity," in other words, gather, "of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather the nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land." So he's going to gather the scattered, and then he's going to bring the nations to the valley of Jehoshaphat. And this is what was done. "For they have cast lots for my people and given a boy for a harlot and sold a girl for a glass of wine that they might drink. As you have taken my gold and have carried away into your temples my goodly pleasant things," in other words, "the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold to the Grecians, that you might remove them from their border." So this is announced in Joel. And this is what happened. Let's go into the scattering and the promise of the gathering, so we can see he who scatters gathers. And just review one more time. In Ezekiel, what was said to HaMashiach, "Fill your hand with coals of fire from between the cherubim and scatter them over the city." And we have to look at Daniel 7 and 12 to really understand this completion of 666. The completion of the scattering, meaning the end or the beginning of the end of Jacob's trouble. So when we look at Daniel 7, we know that Israel is utterly destroyed and given over to the full-on Antichrist. And this is how we're going to be able to determine how long they were given over to in order to come up with this idea of completion of the scattering. So Daniel 7:19, "The fourth beast, exceedingly dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, broke in pieces, and stamped the remnant with his feet. I beheld the same horn made war with the Kodashim and prevailed against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the Kodashim," in other words, Israel, "of El Elyon. And the time came that the Kodashim possessed the kingdom." So it's until they possess the kingdom. But what must have happened is that they are completely prevailed over and destroyed. Verse 23, "The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole ear," that is the whole ear of corn or barley or wheat, "and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And he shall speak great things against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws." Gregorian calendar, right? "And they shall be given into his hand until," here's the verse, "a time, times, and the dividing of times." So remember, 500 years ago, the Gregorian calendar was created. In 1492, the papal bull was issued. Okay? And that was the beginning of the true rule of the Antichrist over all the earth. All of it. Okay? This is the difference, because there's been many Antichrists. So let's look at verse 12:7, the scattering. "And I heard the man clothed in linen, HaMashiach, which was upon the waters of the river, and he held up his right hand, that's who he is, and his left hand, unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that is Yahweh, that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time, and when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, and these things shall be finished. Okay? So Israel fell by the sword, was led away captive into many nations until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Okay? So we're looking for the math around the 400 years, the papal bull, and the time, times, and half a time. But let's look at the history of the scattering in order to understand this. And so here's the word on the scattering to Jeremiah. The word that came to Jeremiah from the Most High, saying, these are the words that the Most High spake concerning Yashrael and concerning Judah. For thus saith the Most High, we have heard a voice of trembling, of fear, and not of peace. Ask ye now whether a man doth travail with child. Wherefore do I see every man with his hands on his loins, as a woman in travail, and all faces are turned to paleness. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble. But he shall be saved out of it. Now, the consolation of this is that in this time of trouble, so the scattering is completes, and then the time of travail on the earth that is worse than any other time begins. And that is what Jacob is delivered out of, the tribulation. His time is a time of tribulation. He's in the tribulation with the nations as they're being judged through 4 of the plagues. And at the 7th trump, ultimately, he is delivered before the judgment. And that is the worst. When all the bowls are released and the earthquakes go nuts, the whole earth is disrupted and every mountain is brought low. But this is just so that you can understand, you've got the scripture here that notes the time of Jacob's trouble. So let's go into the history of the scattering. Israel scattered to the 4 corners and built all of the empires of the world. But the final peak of the Antichrist was yet to come. So we start off, of course, we already went into this destruction of the temple of Jerusalem, and this is the end of Israel's world, the time of Jacob's trouble. Of course, we already said the Babylonian captivity was the beginning, and the second temple was rebuilt. And the 10 tribes went north, fleeing to Alexandria, where they became Hannibal. They were already Mauritania from 1100 BC, from the time of the rule of Dawid, when they would send ships to Tarshish. Ephraim's shipbuilding tribes would do all of this shipping up into Europe and stuff. So they were already familiar with those areas, and they went west all the way across northern Africa. Some went south. I think Reuben went south and Ephraim went more west. And some of Ephraim went east towards America. But many of them built Spain and Portugal. And then eventually Judah joined them to build Russia, France, Germany. And then we'll go into, the West African transatlantic slave trade. But first, we'll just go into a little more details about this particular time. So what do we know about the scattering? Well, we do know that we have to go all the way back to the beginning and the lands that were occupied by the 10 tribes, because they were mainly seafaring people, especially Zebulun and Ephraim. So they very much had the ability to move west along North Africa with the ships. In 1100 BC, at the time of the rule of Solomon and David, they were going up and down with the ships of Tarshish across the gates of Gibraltar, because it's only like, I think it's like a 9-kilometer distance between North Africa and Spain and Portugal, across that waterway. So they were already familiar with those people and lands, and we know that Jonah also went on the ships of Tarshish up north. So they were familiar with heading east along the North African coast and up into Europe and doing trading, because Solomon was ruling the entire world. And they had already established these lands as being lands called Mauritania, okay? From which the term Moors or anything having the prefix of Moor on it is derived from. And I'm going to go into more in a moment. Actually, I'll probably go into that first. But they became to be called by many names, by barbarians, bar meaning son, or son of the promise, by Phoenicians, and they were known to have spread the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph-Bet, which is the alphabet that the English use today, because of course they were up in England and they conquered all of Europe. They civilized it. Everywhere they went, they civilized and built. They became slaves to the whole earth. And so Phoenicians, Moors, barbarians, other than Israel, these were the names that they began to be called by through the scatterings. And we can also see by the names of the places that they went into, for example, like Hibernia. They called some of the lands they were in Hibernia because they were Hebrews, or they would be called Britons because Brit means covenant, men of the covenant. That's what Britain actually means, land of the covenant. So and then Portugal means door, and Israel is the door, the Dalet, door to the Gauls. And Gaal means redeemer, kinsman redeemer. So there are many names that they were called by. And so as we just look at this scattering, I want you to try to remember those names. So in terms of the term Moors, it's derived from many geographical places in Israel and Hebrew words. So in Genesis, Abraham passes through the plain of Moreh and into the Canaanite land. And that's where Yahweh appears to him and says, unto this seed I will give this land. And there build an altar unto Yahweh who appeared to him. And this is also where Israel agreed that they would be cursed or blessed according to whether or not they followed the law. And so in Deuteronomy 11:30, it says also that the Canaanites dwelt in the plain opposite Gilgal beside the terebinth trees of Moreh. So there's the word Moreh. And Moreh in Hebrew here means hill of the teacher. So we know that the Mores amongst Israel are the teachers of the law. The hill of the teacher, or the hill of the oracle. And also Mount Moriah is another name for it. And this is actually where the temple was built, Mount Moriah. And there's a whole etymology that we can look at in this English etymological dictionary that ties all of these Hebrew terms that have the word more in them as the prefix together. We have the fact that Micah was a Morishite, and Mordecai, the uncle of Esther, his name was Mordecai. We've already talked about mores being teachers. Morpheus in Greek and Roman mythology is also the son of the sleep and the god of dreams, who lay on an ebony bed in a dim-lit cave surrounded by poppies. He was also the son of Hypnos, where the word hypnosis comes from. Okay, so it relates to being hypnotized and put into a deep sleep. And what does it say in the scripture? That a blindness in part has come upon Israel, and they are in a deep sleep. Morpheus meaning to transform. And of course, Morpheus is the character in the Matrix who awakens Neo, who awakens the seed from their sleep with the red pill of the blood of Yeshua HaMashiach. Bar Ka, or Bar, this is one of the places in northern Africa, means son and heir of the set-apart place, son of the covenant, sons and heirs of Yah, and that in Hebrew is sons of the God, heir apparent to the throne. So, sons and heirs of Hamashiach. So, when we're looking at Berber or Babel, they used to say that those two were synonymous. We need to actually look at these lands that are called Barbaria and find out what Barbaria actually means. And this land here is in northern Africa, and if you'll notice down on the left here, it even says Galatia when you go down beneath the red line on this map on the left-hand side to the west. So we know all the scriptures. The book of Galatians refers to the Galatians. They weren't just in Europe. They were down here in Africa also. They are, if we look at Numbers 5:5, it says, if a man has no kinsman redeemer to recompense, let the trespass be recompensed unto the Most High, even to the priests. But so you're always looking for a kinsman redeemer to redeem you from slavery, and this, of course, is what Hamashiach is. But just so you can understand what Gala means, or Galatians. And these women are in America, but we'll get to America last. The Greeks actually called the 10 tribes Phoenicians. And there's more evidence to this. So we can see here the pattern of scattering from the region of Israel all the way west across northern Africa. So when we look here, we can ask ourselves, why were the 10 tribes called Phoenicians? Well, the Hebrew Israelite cities Joppa, Dor, and Tyre, and Sidon were the main trading ports for the Phoenicians. Now, when we look at this map, we see clearly that these trading ports were in the land of the northern kingdom, in Asher's land, in Manasseh's land, in Dan's land, and let me see, where's Tyre, Sidon? Yeah. So, and then further down south was Judah's kingdom. So we see very clearly, and we can agree here with more evidence. In Genesis 49:13, it says, Zebulun shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for a haven of ships, and his border shall be Sidon. Although these maps get redrawn again and again, and they're not so accurate, we do know that the 10 tribes were seafaring. More evidence to the Phoenicians being Hebrews. Most scholars believe that the Greek word more was the Greek word for purple, and it's also the word that gave the Phoenicians their name. So in Greek, poinos meant purple or dark red. In other words, the Greeks called those merchant princes of Levant, the Levites, the Levitical priests, something like the purple people. And so in this book it says Phoenician exports included cedar and cloths and dyed with famous Tyrian purple made from the snail Morex or moray. But here's the interesting thing. The American 10 tribes and the Phoenicians and the Berber alphabet, like the English alphabet and the Hebrew pictographic alphabet, and the Filipino Tagalog alphabet, so this is the Filipino language, are all identical. So these are the traces of Israel being scattered west, so north, south, east, west. And even we have the term Hibernia applied to Israel. And we also see it among the Carthaginians. The Carthaginians were barbarians, okay? And so Barbar eventually became Berber, like Berber spice, which is the Ethiopian spice that everyone loves. And with Genesis 10:21, we can see the correlation. Unto Shem, also the father of all the children of Eber. So here's the etymology of Eber, from Eber to Hebrew to Ebro to Iberian to Hibernia to Igbo tribe in West Africa. So this is the evidence of the scattering in terms of etymologies. So let's look at just Spain and Portugal for a brief moment. Then we're going to start with Carthage. Again, it's the same people. They've got the Galatians there, the Gaul there. And this area is also called Hibernia. We also have, obviously, Mauritania down here. So let's look at Carthage. So when we look at the Carthaginian Empire, which was between 9th century BC and 146 BC, so they say, we find out that Hannibal was dwelling there at their time, and he was considered Rome's most formidable adversary. And the reason why he's considered to be probably Hebrew is this is what was written of him. How can we accept the fact that he was a Jew, really an Israelite by origin? The answer is not far-fetched. And his name is made up of Hani and Baal. So Hani is the short form of the biblical Hanael, mercy of Yah. And he was the son of Ephod. And of course, Ephod is what a priest would wear. And he represented the tribe of Manasseh during the division of the land of Canaan. And he originated also it's suspected from Asher. And so here's a bronze coin depicting Hannibal, and it's from central Italy. And so when we look at Hannibal Barca, Hannibal, who was the king of Carthage during the whole Carthaginian Empire, and he went to defeat Rome by going over the mountains with elephants.
For over 600 years, by developing some of the ancient world's most groundbreaking technology, both at home and in the far reaches of the known world. The centerpiece, a massive harbor that held hundreds of warships, the vanguard of antiquity's most formidable navy.
These ships are coming up fast.
So when we look at the scattering of Israel, the 10 tribes and the southern kingdom, we do know that all the way from 1100 BC, the Moors were in Mauritania at the time of Solomon's reign, and the Arabs were not there until 700 CE, or after the AD, after the birth of Christ. And they often take credit for all of the advances of the Moors and the identity, but they can't really take any of it because they weren't there until 1800 years after the true Moors were there. And so there were a lot of wars and conquests, and obviously I've shown that they moved into Spain. But when they fled Jerusalem, after the fall of the temple, many did what Yah said not to do. Don't go down to Mitzrayim. But they went to Mitzrayim, they went to Alexandria and lived very well there. And of course were pursued westward across North Africa as they prospered. And they joined their brothers in Mauritania. Some went down to Africa. And of course many went north into Europe as well, among the Natsari, the converts. The converts also went north, south, east, west, but many of them went into Europe. And you can even trace this lineage through Queen Victoria, who speaks of being a vandal, a wandal, which is secured by the tent peg to the door, is what wandal means, vandals. And she actually had a poem that was penned to her on the occasion of her wedding to George III and the coronation celebration, and it said, descended from the warlike Wandel race, she still preserves that title in her face, those shone triumphs o'er Numidia's plain. So Numidia was also an area in North Africa that they were in, and Illusion Fields, their name retains. So But they but subdued the southern world with arms. She conquered still with her triumphant charms, O born for rule, to whose victorious brow the greatest monarch of the north must bow. So this is talking about how she is a Hebrew and she's a queen, very light skinned, but even the monarchs of the north had to bow to her because of who she is as Israel. So let's go more into Britain. So we can see here by these maps that, again, what is known as Britain or Hibernia was actually Hebrew land deriving from the word Brit or covenant, and Hebrew, Britannia, man, meaning man of the covenant. The 10 tribes in Yehuda, and also they moved all the way up into Hibernia, the land of the covenant. And here is one of the first Roman kings who happened to be a black man, a king of Hibernia. And also we have Kenneth the Niger, who around 900 AD was in the UK, and he had descended from other blacks who were there. And of course Niger comes from the term the Niger River, because everything east of the Niger River to Euphrates was given to Yashrael. And so some of his other descendants are shown here. And of course, there were also black Vikings, as I've spoken about before, in the region. And when we look at the Moorish heraldry, we see that they were, even in Germany, there were over 497 shields with Moors on them. And they like to say they were their slaves, but really it was for the Moors, Israel, to be able to account for their families and their achievements. And you don't really see any white people on these things, so it really doesn't make any sense. We also see all of the jewelry. So these are the jewelry that the Moors made. And of course, people don't make jewelry out of, actually, their servants. So there's just a plethora of this kind of jewelry still held by the Europeans. We see more of the heraldry here with some of the men and women who would go before the military and to frighten the enemy. And so these are the wars they fought in Europe. And here's an example of Moorish jousting. And here's some of their empires in Germany, and pictures of them fighting with the invading German armies. And of course you see them wearing the headbands. The Moors are of course wearing the headbands. They've got the blue and the red colors, and they've got the dreadlocks and the dark skin. We also have images of Sheba in the scripture as a black woman in the German Bible. And then here are the German Grand Master Ulrich von Jungen, who is clearly a black man here on the right, and on the left he's been whitewashed, and he was part of the Teutonic Order. They call it the Teutonic Order, but the real word is coming from Deuteronomy, because they obeyed the law in Hamashiach. And so you see him wearing the cross, but at the same time he's following the law. So he has the law and the testimony of Yeshua HaMashiach. Here's another lighter skinned Grand Master of the Teutonic Knights, Albrecht von Hohenzollern. And so we see here in these traditions the German royal dynasty that was eventually to be defeated by the Catholics. And that's actually what that war image was about, was the defeat of them at that time. And of course the Moors went all the way up into Europe. Here they are in Holland in the 1500s, still running, escaping, building, and sharing the good news with the Gentiles of those lands. And here's some more images of that. Eventually, though, a lot of them had to submit to Catholicism in order to survive, and eventually denied the true Natsar faith. But then began the time of Jacob's trouble, the time of the scattering, when they were banished from Europe to Africa. And once the Europeans found out that these people of Israel had been abandoned by the Most High, they started ousting them, despite all their wealth, out of Italy in 1342, out of France in 1403, out of England in 1422, Spain in 1462, and of course the papal bull was extended to the Americas in 1492. And so these papal bulls, these proclamations that went out, enabled the Europeans to conquer any pagans, any people or nation who wouldn't convert to Catholicism, and to consign them to perpetual servitude. And this was in 1452, 56, 81, renewed in 1514, and extended in 1492, 93 to the Americas again. And so this is the blood of the saints that sits beneath the catacombs of many churches, beneath the altar of many churches in the New World, but mainly in Europe. And they're sort of ritualistically placed. And these are the bones, the blood of the ancestors, that cry out from beneath the altar, saying, "How long, O Yah, until you avenge us?" And these are the prayers that are taken up by the 8th angel of Yah and dropped in Israel in the form of an earthquake in Revelation. These are the bones of the Hebrews tortured, murdered, and plundered for holding on to the Torah, Tanakh, and Yeshua HaMashiach. So the next time you, as a descendant of the transatlantic slave trade, mock the book, think about all these people, and there's over 8 million of them just in Spain who died to hold on to that book. And so this was the time of the Inquisition in Europe and the time of Jacob's trouble there. And of course, we have all of the catacombs in Spain and all over Europe where the bones of the Hebrew ancestors who were tortured, their remains cry out. And of course, over 100 million people died in the transatlantic slave trade on the way to the Americas, and over 100 million of our people who lived in the Americas of the 10 tribes also died. So this is the blood of the saints crying out. And we see here these paintings of Goya that are clearly whitewashed, because he really tried to portray the Hebrews as the true black Moors of Europe, and they're a bit whitewashed again. That's why you've got these large brushstrokes, but nonetheless, this is the terror that's going to come upon all of the nations until they repent, and they're going to have to return Yashrael and to return themselves to Yeshua. And at this time, the children were sent to Saint Thomé and then further down into Africa as slaves from Europe. And of course, meanwhile, the 10 tribes and Judah had also already been building empires in Africa. This is one of the South African cities, empires of Israel, that was destroyed by the Boers. This is the Benin Empire. This is Timbuktu, and we can see here also that this was finally the empire Negro land, Yehuda, and of course Negro coming from the Niger River, representing the lands of Abraham, Negro land, and Yehuda, Wida, from which all the slaves went into America. And so now we come to America and we see almost identical cities that were built in the round to the ones in, this is Benin. And so it's the same people. These were the tribes who went into America to escape and be able to practice, according to 2nd Esdras, their faith without interference. And of course they failed terribly. But yeah, so this is the Empire of Benin, Timbuktu. And here are the original images of the original people here in America. And of course, they're all black. And once Dum Diverses, the Pope came and read his papal bull of 1492, he came to enslave everyone in America also. And it was even said that they had mathematics even more advanced than the Greeks. And so here are some of their empires, their kings sitting in the midst of their large and lavish cities, to which all people streamed in their region. And here's the Decalogue stone that has Hebrew on it, which is supposed to be representative of them actually being there. And the Decalogue tablet also. And so, of course, many of them today still claim their heritage to be the first people in the land of North America, as well as Israel. Meanwhile, in places like the Philippines, Australia, South Pacific, Hawaii, all of the same thing, but all over the world, the Hebrews are persecuted and enslaved and slain. And of course, King James ruled till the 1600s in the UK, where he had a large family that was taken down by Oliver Cromwell. But knowing, of course, what was happening, he commissioned the King James Bible, which he dedicated to his people, Zion, who were going into captivity. And then his family, like all of the rest of the Hebrews in this very sad story, discontinued from their inheritance. So, for all these things, they shall lay hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues, etc. And so, like I just said, Columbus sailed to America and began to scatter the children there. But, so this is where the scripture breaks into two, into the transition from the end of Israel to the end of Esau. And Jacob's trouble ending basically bridges those two ends. So if we look at the Papal Bull of 1492 and we look at the transatlantic slave trade and the end of 400 years, we can come up with a calculation for this: time, times, and half a time. Okay? Once again, Daniel, to reiterate Daniel 7, the fourth beast is of the Iron Kingdom, and he stamps the remnant down with his feet. He prevails against them until the Ancient of Days comes and judgment is given to the Kodashim of Elyon, and comes the time for them to possess the kingdom. So we see that they're absolutely destroyed, and then things end when Yah, or the Lion of Yah, which is Hamashiach, comes so that they can possess the kingdom. So that's the true ending. And again, this is when before this, the Vicar of Christ thinks to change times and seasons, and they're given into his hand for a time and times and dividing of times. And what this is described as in Daniel 12 is the end of the scattering. It shall be for a time, times, and half a time, when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the people, that all these things shall be finished. So, if we look at the Papal Bull of 1492 and the transatlantic slave trade of 1492, and we look at Daniel and Matthew for the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, we've already gone over the fact that once Israel left the true faith and joined Catholicism and the Muslim faith, then they were utterly destroyed, and the abomination was in their temple. And that abomination is the Catholic Church. And many people already know that the Pope is the ultimate Antichrist. When we look at their Gentile numerological Babylonian system, the Vicar Filii Dei, which is what he's called in Latin, I believe it is, it adds up to 666. So he is literally the Antichrist. And what's curious is, of course, that the Pope just disavowed being the vicar of Christ, being Vicaris Fideli Dei, the Antichrist. So he no longer recognizes himself as the guardian as of this month, which is April, which is around the time of Passover, that he released himself from that role. And he's now just calling himself Jorge Mario Bergoglio, okay? And so let's get back to this number 666. In 1492, the Black Moors had civilized Europe, and they were persecuted in the Inquisition and enslaved. And whether or not you believe the 400 years ended according to the Hebrew calendar or the Gregorian calendar, this math kind of that I've done works out to be about the same. When we subtract 1492 from either date for the end of slavery, the numbers are almost the same. So with the Hebrew calendar, when we subtract it from 2018 of Passover, we subtract 1492 to get 526. When we subtract it from the Gregorian end of slavery, it's 1492. From 2019, we get 527. And so once again, Daniel 12 says that it shall be a time, times, and half a time when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people. All these things shall be finished. And so when we divide 526 years, that's from the Hebrew calendar, by 3.5, we get 150.285 years. When we divide 527, the Gregorian calendar number, by 3.5, we get 150.571 years. So when we look at 150 in terms of gematria, the numerical values of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, we would add 1 plus 5, because those are the only digits being represented in the number 150, and 1 plus 5 equals 6. Whether you're looking at the Hebrew calendar or Gregorian calendar and you're looking at 150 years, 1 plus 5 equals 6 in either case. And so if we take this calculation, then we would say that a time equals 6. And times, that is 2 times, would be 6 also, and 6 again. So that is 6, 6, 6. Now, half of a 150-year period would be 75 years. And so applying the numerological principles of gematria again, we add 7 plus 5 to equal 12. And that's comparable to the 12 tribes of Israel, correct? But also, when we break that down once more, because we have to break it down to a single number, we would add 1 plus 2 to equal 3. And 3 is the number of completion. So in other words, 6, 6, 6, completion. So it shall be for a time, times, and half a time, And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the people, all these things shall be finished. And Jeremiah, alas, for great is that day, so none will be like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. In other words, his salvation and redemption will come out of it. And so this is our hope in this overlap of times. When Jacob will be delivered and we'll see the sun and moon proclaim it as the word in the skies. Okay? So now this is just a calculation that I came up with. This is not a prophetic rhema word from Yah. I don't want anyone running around and saying, oh, she said that this is the end, this is the end, this is the end. This is just something that I've come up with. And we'll see if it turns out to be true. But I do believe we will still be tested, okay, in these last times. But it does give some hope. The right hand of Yah, Yeshua, and Moses stretched forth his hand over the waters. And so, of course, Yeshua says, I'm come to send fire on the earth, and what will I if it be already kindled? But I have a baptism to be baptized with, and how am I straitened till it be accomplished? Suppose thee that I am come to give peace on earth? I tell you, nay, but rather division. So he says straightened till it be accomplished, because this is his hand stretched out over the earth. So Yeshua as the right hand of Yah in Revelation, we see, and I saw heaven opened, and behold a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. His eyes were a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, and he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed with a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Elohim. And the armies which were in heaven followed him, upon white horses clothed in fine linen, white and clean. And out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. And he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness of the wrath of the Almighty. And he hath on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Elohim of Elohims. So he's got the sword, and he's treading the winepress, because this is how he dips his robe in blood. And he is on the white horse. And I saw by night, and behold, a man riding on a red horse, and he stood among the myrtle trees that were in the bottom, and behind him were the red horses speckled in white. And I turned and I lifted up my eyes, and behold, there came 4 chariots out from between the mountains, and the mountains were of brass. The first chariot were red horses, and the second black horses, and the third chariot white horses, and the fourth grizzled and bay horses. And answered and said unto the angel that talked to me, What are these, my Lord? And the angel answered unto me, These are the 4 spirits of the heaven, which go forth from standing before the Most High of the earth. The black horses are therein, go forth to the north country, and the white go forth after them, and the grizzled go forth to the south country. The bay went forth and sought to go, that they might walk to and fro through the earth. And he said, Get you hence, walk to and fro through the earth. So they walked to and fro through the earth, then cried upon me and spake unto me, saying, Behold, these that go towards the north country have quieted my ruach in the north country. So this is the 4 horsemen breaking out on the north country, which would be Babylon and Europe. and the bay horses, which we'll see when we look at the rest of the four horsemen. We're only going into the first white horse because we're getting long in time. But the bay horses create conflict between the nations, the heathen. But here is in Zechariah 1, 6 and 6 are the precursors to the four horsemen in the Brit Hadashah, what people know as the New Testament. So let's look at the first horseman. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder, one of the four living creatures saying, "Come and see." And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him had a bow. Now, the actual Hebrew word for this is mattock, not bow. Okay? He didn't have a bow. That's an English translation. It's mattock. And he that sat upon him had a mattock, and a crown, a corona, a crown, was given unto him. And he went forth conquering and to conquer. So when we look at the mattock, which value is 7 numerologically in Gematria, it means to cut, piece, or it's a weapon, or it nourishes, because of course it hews down crops. And mattock for the harvest, so a sickle for the harvest. And in Revelation 2:27 it says, "And he shall rule them with a rod of iron." And the word rod is also for mattock. "As the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father." Revelations 14:19 says, "The angel thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and cast it into the great wine press of the wrath of Elohim." So you see that this is how Hamashiach is dipping his robes in blood, using the sickle to harvest, conquering and to conquer with the rod of iron. He's ruling, but it's also a sickle being used for the harvest. It's not a bow in the sky. It's not a rainbow. It's not just a rod. It's an instrument for the harvest. And of course, the many crowns could be the many strains of corona. Is there not a harvest of death here? Even though it's passing through the hands of the enemy, nonetheless, it is what it is. And then here's more of a reference to the sickle and harvesting. Matthew 13:24. "He said unto them, An enemy hath done this," when speaking of the tares being sown among the wheat. "And the servant said unto him, What wilt thou then, that we should go and gather them up?" And then Yeshua says, "Nay, lest while you gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and in the time of the harvest I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them into bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn." So this is a harvest of both the wicked and the righteous. And so another reference to this particular harvest is that it's clear here that, the righteous and the wicked may not all be Hebrew-looking Israelite people. There's a lot of good people among the Gentiles who will also be harvested because they have been living according to Mashiach and his laws. And so here we have the evidence of this. In Leviticus 23:22, it says, "When you reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not make a clean riddance of the corners of thy field when thou reapest, neither shalt thou gather any gleaning riddance of the corners of thy field when thou reapest of the harvest. Thou shalt leave them unto the poor," okay, poor, "and to the stranger. I am Yahweh." your Elohim. Blessed are the poor, for they shall see the kingdom of heaven. And Israel is the poor, and Israel is also the four corners. The repayment of four lambs for the one lamb taken at the time that David took the other man's lamb. Okay? So this is the slain of Israel, the four corners of the earth scattered to the four corners. And then the stranger that dwells amongst Israel has the same inheritance. So it goes to the four corners, Israel, the poor, and the stranger. And of course, we know about the configuration in the desert. So to wrap up this portion for now, I just want to summarize what we've talked about. There are two worlds ended, and that's according to Yeshua and the prophets, the end of the eon of Israel, the rule of Israel, and then the end of the rule of Esau. And there's an overlapping transition there, or transfer. And there are 7 signs of the end, the Tav, which is the X, as Israel is the end sign set up for the nations, the 2 sticks of Joseph and Judah becoming one, and them being the son of Yah, the son of man, the firstborn son, and they're rising from the west to the east as lightning comes from the east to the west. So Yeshua is the sign, his light coming from the east to the west to gather and deliver Israel. And then the Tav represents the 400 years as well in Hebrew, when the iniquity of the Amorites has come to its full for the reaping, for the harvest. The sun turning to darkness and the moon turning to blood are the clear sign of the groom coming out of his chamber for his bride to baptize her in blood and cleanse her of her sin. And these are the signs in the heaven. And the question again I asked was, will a full blood moon line up with equinox next year for Passover? Because the month starts at the same time every year for eternity, just like the Shabbats go from Shabbat to this. The weeks go from week to week to week in multiples of 7. Nothing ever changes, and it doesn't change according to the moon. So the moon has got to meet at the sun's appointed time. So I'm wondering if that will happen next year. And the 7 signs continue. The scattering will be completed when the 400 years is over and Israel is regathered. And so we begin to see the smoke and the fire of Yah's throne descending with judgment on the earth, and Yeshua with the 4 horsemen, and fire and dark clouds, and Israel gathering his elect with this sign of the Son of Man, and these 4 ruachs. So these winds, this rushing wind, the Holy Spirit is like a rushing wind, right? So this is the return of Yah, Yeshua, and the rushing wind. And then the sign of the abomination of desolation having completed its time. So the Pope has already abdicated his title as the Vicar of Christ. And but before that, Israel's secret place was uncovered, and he abode in the temple of Israel in their deaths. 6th sign is the scattering of Israel accomplished. 666 completed. Time, times, and half a time, which I said, as described earlier, it was 666 completed at the end of 400 years. And of course, the 4 horsemen, the 4 plagues that Israel endures with Egypt, and then the 7 trumpets, marking the deliverance of Israel and Yah's punishment coming full force on the nations with a distinct beginning. Not just tribulation, but judgment after Israel is secreted away. So we'll go into that in the next video. Thank you so much. So here is the hope. The word says in Joel 2 that the earth will quake before them, and the heavens shall tremble, and the sun and the moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. The Most High will utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great, and he is strong that executeth his word. For the day of the Most High is great and very terrible. Who can abide it? Therefore also now, saith the Most High, turn ye even to me with all your heart, with fasting and with weeping and with mourning. Rend your heart, not your garments. Turn unto the Most High your Elohim, for he is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness, and repenteth him of the evil. Who knoweth if he will return and repent, and leave a blessing behind him, even a meat offering and a drink offering unto the Most High your Elohim. Blow the trumpet in Zion, sanctify a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the people and sanctify the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children and those that suck the breast. Let the bridegroom go forth out of his chamber, and the bride out of her closet. Let the priests and the ministers of Yah weep between the porch and the altar, and let them say, spare thy people, O Most High, and give not thine heritage to reproach, that the heathen should rule over them. Wherefore should they say among the people, where is their Elohim? Then will the Most High be jealous for his land and pity his people. Yea, the Most High will answer and say unto his people, behold, I will send you. Come and wine and oil, and ye shall be satisfied therewith. And I will no more make you a reproach among the heathen. For it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Most High of hosts, I will break his yoke from off thy neck, and burst thy bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him. But they shall serve the Most High their Elohim, and David their king, who I will raise up unto them. Therefore fear thou not, my servant Jacob, saith the Most High, neither be dismayed, O Israel, for lo, I will save thee from afar, and thy seed from the land of their captivity. And Jacob shall return, and shall be in rest, and be quiet, and none shall make him afraid. For I am with thee, saith the Most High, to save thee. Though I make a full end of all the nations, whether I have scattered thee, yet I will not make a full end of thee, but I will correct thee in measure, and will not leave thee altogether unpunished. For thus saith the Most High, thy bruise is incurable, and thy wound is grievous. There is none to plead thy cause, and thou mayest be bound up. Thou hast no healing medicine. All thy lovers have forgotten thee, they seek thee not, for I have wounded thee with the wound of an enemy, with chastisement of a cruel one, for the multitude of thine iniquity, because thy sins were increased. Why criest thou for thine affliction? Thy sorrow is incurable, for the multitude of thine iniquity, because thy sins were increased. I have done these things to thee. Therefore they that devour thee shall be devoured, and all thine adversaries, every one of them, shall go into captivity, and they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, and all they that prey upon thee I will give for a prey. For I will restore health unto thee, and I will heal thee of thy wounds, saith the Most High, because they called thee an outcast, saying, This is Zion, whom no man seeketh after. Thus saith the Most High, Behold, I will bring again the captivity of Jacob's tents, and have mercy on his dwelling places. And the city shall be builded upon her own heap, and the palace shall remain after the manner thereof. And out of them shall proceed thanksgiving, and the voice of them that make merry. And I will multiply them, and they shall not be few. And I will also glorify them, and they shall not be small. Their children also shall be as aforetime, and their congregation shall be established before me. and I will punish all that oppress them, and their nobles shall be of themselves, and their governor shall proceed from the midst of them. And I will cause him to draw near, and he shall approach unto me. For who is this that engaged his heart to approach unto me, saith the Most High? And ye shall be my people, and I will be your Elohim. Behold, the whirlwind of the Most High goeth forth with fury, a continuing whirlwind. It shall fall with pain upon the head of the wicked. The fierce anger of the Most High shall not return until he hath done it, and until he hath performed the intents of his heart. In the latter days you shall consider it. Thank you so much for watching. May God bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you. May he be gracious, lift the light of his countenance, and give you peace. Shalom, family. Feel free to like, subscribe, and share so other people can get this message if they're meant to. And hopefully I'll have the next video up soon, but not too soon, because I'm trying to get myself ready and keep myself healthy. So thanks for